I'm reading the first 11 verses of Mark 14, Jesus anointed at Bethany. Now, the Passover and the festival of unleavened bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law were scheming to arrest Jesus and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or the people may riot. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table in the home of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume made of pure nard. She broke the jar and poured the perfume on his head. Some of those present were saying indignantly to one another, "Why this waste of perfume? It could have been sold for more than a year's wages and the money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, and you can help them any time you want. But you will not always have me." She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body beforehand to prepare for my burial. Truly, I tell you, whenever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, went to the chief priests to betray Jesus to them. They were delighted to hear this and promised to give him money. So he watched for an opportunity to hand him over. And thanks be to God for his holy word.
May God speak into our hearts. We all know the name Judas. His name has entered our very language as betrayer. You are a real Judas. And I think the majority still would know what that word meant. A real Judas. His act of betrayal as part of that greater scheming of those who felt threatened by Jesus has entered the way we think about the world. We know there are Judases today. And yet the woman who poured the oil on Jesus' head remained unnamed and largely forgotten. Is it human nature that we tend to focus on the negative rather than on the positive? Or was the church guilty of thinking only of men, of being patriarchal, and not actually taking that woman seriously? All four Gospels do tell her story in one way or another, or they tell the story of a woman anointing Jesus. They each give a slightly different slant, placing the story at different points, in fact. John's Gospel does give a name, the name Mary, to that woman. But I think Mark is the earlier Gospel and perhaps is more true to reality in saying this woman was unnamed. The disciples forgot to ask her name. Yes, they remembered the words of Jesus and they shared them with followers. And Mark recorded that, but they forgot to ask her name. And it's only I guess, really in the last century, that the church has woken up to the role of women within it and has recognized women in their ministry and has begun to name them. But this woman did a beautiful thing. The disciples were, of course, outraged, but she did a beautiful thing. They were outraged by the extravagance. They perhaps were outraged by the impropriety, almost a sexual overtone, perhaps. Safeguarding officers would get worried. But they were, above all, disturbed by the extravagance, the waste, the expense of this perfume. Imagine the media headlines, the social media gossip, the rumours of what this woman had done. In a moment of huge need on Jesus' part, the disciples are blind to that. He tells them that they'll always have the poor among them. They can help the poor. But at this moment, Jesus is the poor. Jesus is the desperate. Jesus is the needy. And she has done a beautiful thing to me. A beautiful thing. She did what she could. She poured perfume on my body, Jesus said, beforehand to prepare for my burial. Truly I tell you, wherever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Thank God that Mark recorded those words so that that memory can be held, however much it is passed over by preachers down the centuries. Remember the unnamed woman. Yes, Judas played his part. The scheming played their part. But focus on the woman, that act of sacrifice and kindness. The woman did a beautiful thing. And Jesus carries that perfume into the days that follow. He has been anointed. Anointed not by the high priest, not in the temple courts, not by all the religious authorities, but he has been anointed by an unnamed woman from the streets in the house of a leper. Can you think of such contrast? And that's the parallel with Jesus riding the donkey. The extravagant, wasteful action of that woman pointed to the cross. That extravagant, wasteful life, giving of life, and yet, paradoxically, that gift for the world, poured out for friend and enemy alike.